Today, we're taking a look at the Festool ETS 150, a 6-inch sander. The Festool ETS 150 comes in two different versions, a 3-stroke and a 5-stroke. Today I'll be showing you a 3-stroke and I'll show you what that means. It comes, of course, in a Festool sustainer. You get the sander, power cord, manual, etc., and also some storage for sandpaper right here in the new Festool sustainer. Note that the Festool ETS 150 doesn't come with any sandpaper itself, so you definitely want to go to highlandwoodworking.com where they have all the different sandpaper options and even have a great table of all the different types of sandpaper supplied by Festool and their uses. Let me go ahead and show you a close-up of the features on this 6-inch sander, and then we'll get into some operations. If you're not familiar, on Festool products, the green parts are the functional aspects of the product. So here is the on-off trigger, and then there's a button here for keeping it on, so you can pull the trigger, press the button, and then it stays on. And to get it back off, just push in the trigger and the button pops back out. Of course, we've got the plug it here for plugging in the sander, and a dust extraction port here for the 27mm hose. Along the front is infinite variability for the speed from about 6,000 RPMs to about 10,000 RPMs, and the manual talks about when you might want to use the different speeds. On the bottom, of course, is the pad, 6-inch pad with a number of holes. This has the latest multi-jet stream technology where air actually comes out the center and pushes dust and is extracted via all these holes up through the dust extractor. And that really does make a difference in collecting the dust and keeping your sanding pads nice and cool, which makes them last a lot longer. There is a built-in storage for an Allen wrench, and that goes right here in the center where you can change this pad. Festool has multiple different pads for different applications, and of course you can check out all those different accessories online. You may be comparing 6-inch sanders with 5-inch sanders, or maybe you already have a 5-inch sander and you're thinking, do I really need a 6-inch sander? Well, I love my 5-inch sander and I use it all the time. It's really easy to hold and use, pick up around the shop. It's really easy to use one-handed, doesn't weigh that much. The 6-inch is bulkier, it's definitely heavier. It is definitely a two-handed use, at least the way that I always use it. But the difference is in the pad. You're thinking, well, 1-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch, but let me tell you, the 6-inch is a lot bigger than a 5-inch. It's almost 50% larger, and when you're doing large surfaces, nothing's gonna beat this 6-inch. I was recently doing a large tabletop, and it took me hours to sand the top through multiple grits. If I've been using a 5-inch, think about those hours, and 50% larger pad, it would have been even more hours into that project. So 6-inch pad means you're getting your sanding done faster, less sanding time, meaning more time for other things. The other thing about the 6-inch sander is it's going to keep surfaces more flat because it has a larger surface area that's already flat. And because it's heavier and use it with two hands, it won't be nearly as tippy, especially as you get near the edges of your tabletops. I mentioned this is the 3-stroke or 3mm stroke version of this sander. Now when I turn this random orbit sander on, it's going to both spin this pad, and the whole pad is going to make little swirls in a 3mm circle, which is pretty small, making this a very fine sander. There's also a 5mm version of this sander, which makes 5mm little swirls, which is slightly more aggressive than this one. So first I'm going to go ahead and turn this on, and you'll see the whole pad spinning and doing little swirls, making this random orbit. Now, of course, it's pretty hard to see the little swirls. Mostly you just see it spinning around. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and put a little dot right on here. Okay. And I'm going to stop it from spinning around. If I press on this pad, I can stop the rotation part, and then you'll be able to see this dot doing little swirls. And that little circle is a 3mm circle. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and put 100 grit paper onto the bottom of the sander here. Just line up the holes and stick it down. Usually try to get it pretty exact onto those holes. Then of course go ahead and plug it in with the plug-it. Now I have this hooked up to my Festool dust extractor, the CT36, which I definitely love, highly recommend, a fantastic companion to the ETS 150. So I just slap on 27mm hose, and I'll show you the technique that I'm going to go ahead and use on this board. Now, correct sanding, a lot of people go too fast or too slow. You really want to go about 8 to 10 seconds per foot. It says a little over a foot. So going back and forth, which is really, pretty nice steady speed. Now with this sander, it's got a nice weight to it, so I'm letting the weight do the work. I'm definitely not going to be pressing down. So I like to hold the sander here at the front, and then I also like to hold the hoses up. So a lot of times they might be tipping off the table, kind of pulling down or pulling up. So I like to just keep the weight off here, so I kind of tend to hold it here and here. Now getting it down, getting it going, then lifting it off definitely takes just a little bit of practice with the weight of this tool. So let's go ahead and give it a shot here. And there's the bottom of my pad, really no dust on there. Did a nice job extracting it. Really not too much dust on here. I can just feel a tiny bit with my hand, a few little pieces of grit. And that is nice and smooth. 100 grit sandpaper to start on this piece of walnut. Now I'm going to go ahead and just throw on a piece of 120 grit sandpaper just to clean up that 100 grit. Now typically I'd just work my way all the way through these grits. 120, 150, 180, and then usually a 220, and then maybe start some hand sanding from there. Same exact technique. I'll just go back and forth using nice even slow strokes. Now you may be able to see right here at the end a couple of lines, a line here, a line here. This board actually has some snipe at the two ends, and that 100 grit really didn't get rid of that snipe. You'll see that as I was going back and forth, I would lean the sander over the edge by maybe an inch or so as I'm going down the edge, and then I like to overlap my strokes by somewhere around 50% or so to really get some nice coverage when I'm doing a large surface. A quick mention of hand planes versus sanders. In my shop, I'm always using the right tool for the job. Now, a hand plane can be great and really fast for finishing wood. So if you have a well-tuned, sharp hand plane, which takes some time to get going and to learn to use, but it can be a great tool for taking just a few passes on some well-behaved wood, and boom, you've got a great finish, great surface ready for a finish, or just some really light hand sanding, and you're done. And that's a lot faster than pulling out a sander and going through a lot of grits. However, if I'm working on a project that's some curly wood or some grain that's really back and forth, or just a really large surface, I find that the sander and going through the grits can be much faster. I can waste a ton of time trying to fiddle with hand planes for particular types of wood, and even at the very end I still have to sand it because I'm just getting some tear out that I can't get the hand plane exactly what I want. So I find it much faster in those cases to go with the sander. Grab my sander, turn on some tunes, run through a few grits, and boom, I know I'm going to be done, and I know that I'm going to have a great surface. So that's the Festool ETS 150 3-stroke 6-inch sander. And I definitely love this tool. I've used it a lot on my larger projects, and it is fantastic. One of the best parts of the Festool sanders are the versatility of the tool, because there's so many different pad options and definitely sandpaper options here that you can put on the bottom. It works on a variety of things, not only woodworking, but boat building and solid surface materials. You can get all kinds of accessories for this sander, so it's going to work in just a ton of different projects. And don't forget, this sander can also work in various stages of your project, from stripping old paints or varnishes and of course bare wood, all the way through to finish sanding between your coats of final finish and put it on a high gloss. This sander can do it all. The 6-inch pad makes a huge difference over a 5-inch pad when you have large surfaces to do. Now, if you don't do them very often, of course, maybe a upgrade to a 6-inch isn't worth it if you mostly do smaller projects. Obviously, you don't need something quite this big. But if you're doing full-size furniture projects, I definitely recommend looking into a 6-inch sander.